Hello there, thank you for staying with us and welcome to another edition of Channels Beam. I'm Victor Matthias. Now, following recent attacks by terrorists in the country, where it is estimated that they have raised almost £1 billion in ransom from families of victims, Nigerians have been sleeping with one eye open. However, in a bid to nip the menace in the bud, the Nigerian military hierarchy, after a Security Council meeting with President Muhammadu Buhari, reshuffled senior officers with the charge to redouble their effort and commitment in fighting the security challenge facing the country. Today on the program, we will look at the efficacy of this approach and also the pros and cons of citizens having the license to purchase and carry firearms as suggested by the Zamfara State Governor, Bello Mohammed Watawale. But before we get into all of that, let's first of all take a look at what made the trends in the past week.
As the year winds down and amidst a rise in inflation and insecurity, Nigerians still took time out to wish each other a happy new month. They prayed for better times in the country devoid of one-eyed sleep, strong naira and a vibrant economy. With the naira crashing in the parallel market and trading for over 700 naira against the US dollar, it was a pandemonium on the microblogging site Twitter as tweets wept over the consequences of such a fall. The national currency, which traded for 670 against the dollar on Monday, has fallen even further by 6.7% in 2 days as of Friday afternoon.
There you go. Those were some of the trends. But before we get the conversation started, you can be a part of it. Would like to let you know that you can be a part of it from wherever you're watching around the world. Just tweet at us at Channels TV, at Channels Beam, at Victor_MBIDI, as well as Channels Beam # again. Now let's get the conversation started. We have joining us via Zoom Ayodele Adio. He is the managing editor at Avalon Daily. He joins us via Zoom from Lagos. Ayodele, it's a pleasure to have you on the program today.
Thank you for having me. Glad to be here.
Of course. We also have Ndi Kato. She is the executive director of the Nidari Foundation. She is joining us from Abuja, the nation's capital. Indeed, it's a pleasure to have you as well join us today on the show.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. Ndi kicks out the conversation for us. So much has been going on, in the country. We've heard about so much. But let's look at the approaches being carried out or being used at the moment, to nip what we have or the situation that we have in the bud. How confident would you say you are, with what we have on ground?
Not confident at all. I mean, if you have the NSA coming to voice out its frustration for the rest of us who are not paid to do that job and not trained to do that job, I don't know what the rest of us are supposed to say. I don't feel confident at all. At the same time, we still want to give a lot of kudos to our army, military, and what they have been able to do. And, the boots on the ground have been putting in their efforts, their lives on the line and all of that. So seeing the efforts they put in, look at Abuja, for example, and what they were able to avert in Buhari, which cost some of them their lives, unfortunately, and we're so grateful for that. So that part actually just gives us some hope. Look, there are people out here who are dying and who are doing everything they can to make sure that we're safe, and we're grateful for that. But other than that, nothing else in the hierarchy of power just gives us that confidence that things are going right. You would even hear some of these soldiers complaining, look, we forward this information, all of that, and it's being sat on. For the governor of Kaduna to come and say, even when these terrorists threatened to kidnap the president, he had no idea that he was under any form of threat till the governor of Kaduna had to go and tell him himself. Victor, that it doesn't elicit any form of confidence in the people. In Abuja here, we're constantly living in fear. People check back home very early. Everybody wants to make sure that they are home before sundown because you don't know when it's going to happen, what's going to happen. Already the outskirts, outer parts of town, already experiencing attacks. This has been happening for a while now. They've told us to go and carry our children from school. We've had to pick our children early from school. We don't know when school is going to resume, what the situation is going to be. It's all really dire for us down here. Nothing seems bright at all.
Well, let's hope some light will be shone and that brightness that you seek would be back anytime soon. But let me hold you there for a bit and bring the conversation back to Lagos, where Ayodele is standing or is joining us as well. via Zoom too. Ideally, just given by what Cindy, going by what Cindy just said, but in your own perspective, how do you view the way things are going?
First, I think that Indy has her fingers right on the button, and she's extremely correct to say that there is nothing on ground that tells us that there is some sort of a plan to deal decisively with the growing insecurity in our country. What we see every day is a lack of cohesiveness. We see a lack of tact, but more importantly, we see a leadership deficit. And that is the most worrying part for me, because while there is obviously a national security crisis, I would argue that there's a national leadership crisis. Abuja has gone on sabbatical. The National Assembly is not putting its foot on the ground as it should. The 36 state governors who are part of the State Security Council and who are part of the National Police or the Nigerian Police Council are also on holiday. And it worries me that our country seems to be burning and our politicians are busy fiddling. Listen, if we do not take decisive action with what we have seen in the last few weeks in our country, I am afraid public schools are being shut in Abuja as we speak. I saw that the governor of Niger State has put a curfew in certain local governments in his state. The same worry is going around Kogi State as we speak. Let's not even talk about the level of banditry and killings that are ongoing in the northwestern states of the country and the terrorism that we're dealing with the northeastern part of the country. Our country is getting fragile by the day. And it's amazing that as we speak, there is a lack of coherent, bold, or grand plan to get us out of this mess. And it's a shame that Abuja is narrow fiddling while our country burns.
So what would you suggest? Of course, we heard over the weekend that the military made changes in its formations. Isn't that some form of movement or plan now to nip this in the bud?
Victor, we've had this conversation, and the fact that we've had this conversation multiple times also tells you that nothing has changed fundamentally, right? I have argued severally on this platform that to deal decisively with insecurity in our country, you cannot rely solely on boots on ground, on military presence in many of these troubled states. The first thing that needs to happen is to recruit quality, trained, competent police people to properly police many of these local governments that are currently under-policed. We need to train and deploy policemen who also understand the local peculiarities and geography of the terrains that we're deploying these police officers to. Having said that, we also need to deal with the socioeconomic reality in many of these communities that is foiling crime and banditry. We also then need to deal with our national security architecture. The way that we plan and coordinate our security apparatus has to be decisively dealt with, one that is cohesive and one that has a clear direction in which we're headed to. If we do not do these things in a coordinated manner, which is to recruit able and capable policemen to police many of these local governments that are under police, to deal with the socioeconomic realities of many of these communities, to deal with our justice system where many people feel that the Nigerian state is unable to dispense justice, and to redesign our security architecture, you and I will continue to have this conversation over and over again while bodies continue to pile up in many of our villages across the country.
Well, I hope, it doesn't get to that part where, the last part that you said, I don't want to restate that again, but it's good that solutions are beginning to come. Hopefully this time around it will be put to good use. But, Andy, let me bring you back again. When we're looking at, solutions, Adele is beginning to proffer solutions. But, in your own perspective, what more do you think we can do, to reduce, or at least to the barest minimum, or even take this all away, from the country?
Very clear. But and in part of the problems, you also mentioned the problem with leadership. Right now, the country is not, I don't think we have any leadership going on right now. It's quite disappointing that in the middle of all of this, National Assembly can still go on recess. I don't think that's time for that. I think that, number one, we need politicians to stop playing politics with this. It has gotten to that point where, everybody just, I mean, even the senators that are saying they are going to impeach the president, I, for one, think that a major solution for this is for Buhari to go. I know as the media, you're supposed to put a disclaimer immediately after that. So let me put a disclaimer myself. But I feel that is it, because we're not facing any leadership from the very top. From the very top, there's no central leadership happening in Nigeria right now. And it's showing down the line in every other thing. And another thing that Dele spoke to, look, the police needs to do its job, Every time, we can't keep having boots on ground for every situation. Policing is not happening in several parts of this country. That is what is happening right now, and that needs to happen. When we speak about the insecurity in Abuja, I remember talking to a lot of these people in top military brass, and they're like, look, top brass of the military, if you want soldiers on your streets daily, it's not going to be a kind of normal life you're going to live. There are people whose job is to ensure that these places are safe. There are people whose job is to ensure that the peace is maintained, that a certain level of normalcy is maintained in the society. And that's the Nigerian police. I think that we need to see a lot of reforms within the Nigerian police for us to maintain our communities, for our communities to be safe to certain aspects. So we can't keep waiting, until it deteriorates to a certain level. So I believe that is one angle. In terms of on ground, I come from Southern Kaduna. I would say that for my own people, what I really wish would be allowed is for our civilian force to be allowed to do what it is that they can do to protect their community. A lot of communities have people who are forming vigilantes, and these vigilantes, the government is not looking into these vigilantes. Like in the Northeast, for example, we have civilian joint task force, but in places like ours, we're not seeing that. We're not seeing that incorporation of civilian activities into what the military is doing to ensure that these places are kept safe. These people know their homes better than any other people who are just being sent there now. So these people should be allowed. A lot of people are forming vigilantes. Instead, we are seeing that vigilante members have been arrested. Their work is not being, recognized by the government. And I think that we have gotten to that point that, look, communities should be a part of their own safekeeping. People should be able to call out who they don't know. Although I would also say, with the nature of Nigeria without borders, especially in Abuja, I saw the government put that, or the military put that out, that if you don't recognize, and it was the police that did that, if you don't recognize people in your neighborhoods, please speak out. But the very nature of Nigeria and the way we are set up is that we do not recognize people in our neighborhoods. Where I live in Abuja, every day you just see new people coming up. If they're not coming there to do Okada, which is supposed to be banned, you're seeing them coming to do different kinds of menial jobs. You don't know who they are, and they're all in our neighborhoods. We need to take this more seriously. For me, I will go with Dele. My number one thing would be the quality of policing. I think that we need police reforms. I think that we need community policing for what Nigeria is going through right now. We need community policing. We need police to come from the places that they are policing. These are people that know these areas, that grew up in these areas, that know every face in this area. The era where you take somebody from Sokoto and post him to Enugu where he knows nobody, I think we've gone way past that. Nigeria is reeling from the effect of these things. We need reforms. We need community policing. And most importantly, we need our politicians to sit up. I think that a great percentage of what we are going through in this country right now is as a result of politicians messing up the system. They've really messed up the system. They've played politics with everything, and we're at this point. I think that we need to have that conversation as to the negative effects politicians have had on the Nigerian system.
All right, Andy, let me hold you there for a bit, as well as Dele. We'll take a quick break, and of course, when we come back, we'll look at more solutions to this menace the country is facing. That's in a moment. Please stay with us. Thank you for staying with us. We still have with us our panelists joining us via Zoom from Abuja as well as Lagos. Andy, just before we went on break, we're talking about solutions. So let me get you to kickstart this part of the conversation for us again. There's this, how would I put it now? There's this disagreement over, the citizens carrying arms in self-defense. There's been a back and forth. The military hierarchy does not believe this should be so. The governor of Zamfara State says yes, this should be the case. But I mean, what's your perspective on this?
I think that there needs to be improvement in military and civilian relations, and that you can, just like there is the civilian joint task force in the Northeast, that a similar thing can happen in other parts of the nation. But I think at the same time that what the governor of Zamfara State has said is very reckless, to just tell people to carry weapons and just go like that. No, I think that when you see people, when a situation has deteriorated to that point where people have already on their own had to carry weapons, had to enter and be vigilantes, then you find how to inculcate that into the work you're doing and know that, look, these people have a better understanding of the terrain. With their help, we can get this work done better. So a civilian joint task force situation is better than the governor of a state literally telling his people, just go out there and get arms and protect yourselves. I think that is very different and that is very careless. I do not subscribe to that. But when it comes to CGTF, I think that is when these things are already on ground, because communities are already having to do this. And when the military is in these spaces, when the police is in these spaces, I think that they need to recognize that communities are already doing this and then to look for how to merge their work to make things better.
All right, Adele, let me move it over to you. You know, what do you think about this that call for people to carry arms by themselves, you know, and defend themselves when the time comes, or when need be?
It's a complete failure of the state, and it only points to the fact that the state has lost its legitimacy, because the primary responsibility of government is the protection of life and property. And when you cede that responsibility, or when you concede that you're incapable of protecting lives and properties, what you essentially have said is that your government has lost legitimacy. Now, in Zamfara State, where he had made that particular call, one of the problems that they are experiencing in Zamfara is the fact that these bandits have a running struggle with the local vigilantes who they are always having clashes with. And there are several papers that have pointed to the fact that it was the rise of some of these vigilantes that has fueled, you know, some of the reprisal attacks that we've seen in some of the villages in Zamfara, because those vigilantes were not properly coordinated by the government, as it was the case in the northeastern part of the country, where you had the joint civilian task force that were properly managed and coordinated under a particular office under the state government. Now, if you're going to even call for people to pick up arms, which in my own world makes absolutely no sense to me, it has to be carefully coordinated, you know, by the state government, such that it has happened in the southwestern part of the country where they have the Amotekuns, that, you know, they passed the legislation and they have armed a particular kind of security apparatus to deal with insecurity in many of the forests in the southwestern part of the country. That should have been the kind of approach I would have expected from the Zamfara state governor, not the idea that you just bind everybody to the Philistines and say all man for himself. First of all, where do you expect them to get these guns from? We are complaining that there's a proliferation of light arms across many states in the northern part of the country. And here you are saying to people to just simply go and look for where to buy arms. What you're saying, in essence, is that these people who trade in these light arms should have an open market in Zamfara State, where they should start retailing guns to farmers, cattle herders, market women in Zamfara State at 100 naira a dozen. For goodness sake, what kind of country are we living in? So for me, the governor should have taken more responsibility to protect the life and property of citizens. And this idea that governors are helpless, I hear this thing every time, and I worry when governors appear to be helpless. Because when they want to use security agencies for their own selfish interests, suddenly they have control over the police. But when it comes to protecting lives and property in their states, they throw their hands up in the air as though they have absolutely no control. And I've stated on this platform severally that the police, that every state governor is part of the police council, and they have rights and powers in the constitution to determine how the police are governed in this country. And they have powers in this constitution to determine how our security architecture is being superintended over. So this constant idea from governors that they have no control over security apparatus, that they simply cannot do anything, you know, about their state, and the citizens can just be binded to the Philistines. When it's time for politics, they can hold the president to ransom. They can decide who emerges as a senator in their state, irrespective of what the president decides. They can decide who becomes the flag bearer of their political party, irrespective of what the president wants. But when it comes to the security of lives and properties, these same governors will tell you they cannot simply do anything because Abuja is looking the other way. I think it's a shame, and it's something that the Nigerian people should no longer tolerate.
Well, you know, over the course of last week, you know, we saw videos here and there about what is happening in the terrorist dens. Some of the terrorists spoke by themselves, saying what the problem is for them. I think Indy kind of touched on some of those things, which is inequality, justice and all of that. Do you think, if you have a dialogue, do you think dialogue would solve this ideally? Do you think dialogue would solve those issues that the terrorists and bandits raised in those videos that we saw over the course of last week?
I think those terrorists that we saw have gone beyond dialoguing with anybody. These people make hundreds of millions of naira. Nobody wants to sit on a table with you to give him 50,000 naira to start up a small business. Those guys have gone beyond dialoguing with anybody. They are kings. They are kings of the forest on their own. We have to deal with those people decisively with military force and to quell whatever banditry is happening in northwestern part of the country. But as a strategy going forward, the Nigerian state must begin to dispense equity and justice and must begin to treat its citizens with dignity and with respect. Because every time there is a rise of non-state actors in our country, whether it's in the northwest, whether it's in the northeast, whether it's in the southeastern part of the country, or whether it was the case when it happened in the southwest, every time they point to the lack of the state's ability to dispense justice. And that is a fundamental problem with the Nigerian state. It lacks the capacity to deliver justice and to treat its citizens with basic decency and dignity. So as a strategy going forward, the Nigerian state must wake up to begin to treat its citizens like human beings. And, and moving forward, I hope that is being incorporated. But at the moment, with those guys in the forest, I'm sorry. I think it's only military force that can deal with that.
Well, I hope they deal with it and deal with it decisively. But I have to say thank you for joining us on the show today, Ayodele Adio, Managing Editor at Avalon Daily, as well as Ndi Kato, Executive Director at Denidari Foundation. You joined us both via Zoom from Lagos and from Abuja. Well, that's where we are. Of course, you're welcome. But of course, again, I'd like to put out the disclaimer that, the views expressed by our guests do not necessarily represent the views of the TV station, that's Channels Television. It is their views entirely. But that's where we wrap it up today on the show. Thank you so very much for watching. I'm Victor Matthias, and would leave you with the most viewed videos on our YouTube channel in the past week. Bye for now.
Davido's performance at his uncle's governorship campaign rally keeps tickling the fancy of Nigerians as it kicks off this week's most viewed videos in 5th place. It is followed in 4th by the sentencing of 3 suspects to death by hanging after being found guilty of murdering Funke Olakunrin.
This victory, I dedicate it to him.
3rd is Governor-elect of Osun State breaking down in tears and dedicating his victory at the polls to his elder brother, late Isiaka Adeleke.
It's okay. It's okay.
And in 2nd is the River State Governor Nyesom Wike replying presidential candidate of the PDP, Atiku Abubakar, over events that transpired after the party's presidential primaries.
I have to make sure I will act line by line. Statements made by Atiku Abubakar himself and his attack dogs. I will do that.
And in 1st place, moving 3 steps up from last week's chart, is President Muhammadu Buhari's solemn message, where he hoped that terrorists will understand that Nigeria's problem is to be productive.
The people that are organizing themselves and attacking institutions and so on, they know them, let them report them to the security agencies.